Welcome to the Anxiety at Work podcast. I'm Chester Elton, and this is my dear friend and co-author, Adrian Costa.
We hope that the time you're going to spend with us will help remove the stigma of anxiety and mental health in the workplace and your personal life. And we invite really cool experts from the world of work and life to give us ideas and, most importantly, tools to deal with anxiety in our world.
And our guest today is Stéphane Carbonnier, Chief Human Resources Officer of L'Oréal USA. Before joining L'Oréal in 2013, he worked more than 2 decades in key HR leadership positions at global organizations including Towers Watson, PepsiCo, Kraft Foods, American Express, and McDonald's in Europe and in the United States. His current role as CHRO, Stéphane is responsible for leading the company's overall HR strategy in the U.S., including talent acquisition, learning and development, total rewards, HR operations, and people analytics. He has built a high-performing team inclusive of centers of excellence and division leads who are all focused on creating the best possible employee experience. He's got a wonderful French accent. We love spending time with Stéphane. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Chester, for that introduction. I'm super happy and grateful for you guys to have me on the show today.
Well, we are thrilled just to learn what you're doing at L'Oréal to care for your people. So tell us a little bit about your human resources priorities, maybe today versus before the pandemic. What's new? What's different?
Well, certainly, Adrian, in the past, in the past year, there has been so many things that went on certainly got our focus on the safety of our employees. And I would be remiss, we've been through so much, but unfortunately the world today is just, we're going through, very difficult time. And I want to have some thoughts for our certainly Ukrainian employees and what's going on in Ukraine, because we've seen a lot of crisis with the pandemic, but unfortunately the world is a rough place right now. So I want to start by acknowledging what's happening there, and then when we think about the past 2 years, it's been a lot certainly for us, as I know a lot of companies, to make sure that we were taking care of our employees, looking after their safety, so that they could come to work and continue to produce for our consumers, and we've supported them through that, and it feels like it has been the sole focus, but it was extremely important for us, and I think we've done a lot of things to take care of our employee and put them at the heart of everything we've done. So the good news is because we were deemed as an essential business during that time, all of our manufacturing employees, people in our warehouses, DCs, they came to work to continue and to keep our business running, which meant, yes, some people could work remotely, but we had to organize ourselves from procedure, policies, protocols to make sure that we kept them safe and we cared for them. And the good news is they really felt we were caring for them. So now, fast forward almost 2 years later, now that we have all of those protocols and policies in place, we can almost resume to our sort of HR agenda. Certainly at L'Oréal, we continue to focus on developing our employees and our talent, making sure we have the right capabilities. And I think what we've learned as well, certainly things that are shifting, is how do we think about the next experience for our employees? What is going to be the future of the workplace? What's going to be the experience we want them to have? And this is something that certainly the HR function focuses on now. So if you're asking me what happened before, we focused on the safety, and I think we have that under control as much as we can, of course, but we have all of the policies and procedure in place. And now we're really looking at the future forward. What does that look like for employees to feel like they're engaged and connected?
So interesting, like you say, get back to the HR agenda of people development. We can now check the box on safety. Now let's look forward. What does that look like? Really interesting. Let's talk about well-being at a high level and what you're seeing out there, like the good and the bad. What have you seen with leaders that are trying to improve the conversation around mental health and anxiety over the last year or two?
What I've seen is actually out of any crisis, there's always a silver lining. And for
Right.
me, the silver lining of that crisis, that pandemic that we just, went through, as well as the social crisis, is that it has really opened much more humane and empathetic leadership. We see leaders now making the space for people to share their feelings. And I see certainly a much greater openness to discuss what was before, something that we would never share, that vulnerability. And as you guys know, creating the space to for people to be vulnerable is really establishing the basis for trust in an organization. And I certainly see that a lot. We've seen leaders, also starting by sharing their own vulnerability and removing, with the stigma around anxiety. And I know this has been a big part of your work in the book that you wrote around, how do we talk about that? How do we make sure that we let the guard down and everybody has anxieties, and how do we make sure people are not going to feel this, this is not okay to talk about my anxiety because no one else is. No, now it's very different. So that's,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting just to jump in. I'm very comfortable talking about Adrian's anxiety.
Well, what did the doctor say to you, Chess? Was it a complete mental and physical breakdown? Wasn't that what he said last week? Yeah. So, yeah, very happy to share that. Yeah.
Yeah, on that point, you're right. The vulnerability, but I'm talking about my anxiety. What was the old line? I have a friend
Yeah.
that I want to tell you
Yeah.
about,
Right.
right? And that friend, of course, is you.
Hey, recently, and I just kind of keep going on this conversation about our people, because a lot of the people who listen to this are people leaders, or they're trying to become leaders. And you talked about the Great Resignation really being a great reawakening. So I love that idea. So explain that, and maybe how leaders can react.
So, my take on that is obviously the Great Resignation is a big buzzword, and I'm not saying it is not real in the part of certainly the industry and some functions and roles. What I'm saying is, instead of seeing that as a as a sort of a threat, let's see that as an opportunity for employers to learn, to listen to their employees differently. What certainly that year of 2020 brought to a lot of people is understanding what their priorities are and resetting them in a way that was certainly maybe unexpected from the employers and the company side, but it certainly reinforced the need to reinvent the way we consider what matters to people and the way to listen to employees. And we've done a lot of things at L'Oréal when it comes to listening circles and listening our employees and collaborating with them. We talked earlier about the safety and the protocols around returning to the office safely. As an example, we use some of our so we call them think tank. They're basically ERG. We used one of our ERG, the Parent Society, to develop our protocol to make sure the parents could return to work safely, to make sure that they had the flexibility. So I think that's why I said, Adrian, when we talk about the Great Resignation, for me, it's actually a great opportunity for employers to listen and rehire, in a way, their own employees, because you have a different type of connection, and if you're staying very much in tune with what's happening, what people have on their mind, you create the safe space for them to talk, you're going to feel them engaged in a different way, as opposed to see that as just a threat and I need to make sure that I'm going to retain them. You can do that proactively, is my point.
And we heard that so much as we were writing the book, especially from younger people. And so you're right. If there's a silver lining, it's organizations are listening more and are processing a little bit what I think the younger employees wanted us to be doing all along was listening and resetting our priorities a little bit. That's terrific.
Absolutely.
This plays into there's been lots of conversations about diversity and inclusion. And certainly with, there wasn't just the pandemic, there was the social upheaval as well. So that's been important, and in the conversations we've had in other, venues that you and I have been on, that's been important to L'Oreal for some time. What's the connection to wellness and, diversity and inclusion as opposed to just the lip service that we see in so many different organizations?
Yeah.
How do you make that connection?
So first of all, we do as an organization, this is, our purpose is to create the beauty that moves the world, and making sure that everyone will feel comfortable to, with the world of beauty and use whatever product you need and to feel comfortable in yourself. And in the context of the workplace is bring your whole self to work. And that's what we want. That's why we want to establish a safe place for employees to be here, a safe place to be themselves, whoever they are and wherever they want to be. And I think it's critical in that in our certainly culture to create a sense of belonging. Because if people want to be there and if they feel themselves when they're here, we know they're going to give their best, bringing every day who they are and what they can contribute to. So it's a very important part of our people strategy, and we've been recognized a number of time. We were recently, I think it was in August, we were actually certified by an organization called Edge. We were the first company in the world to be certified Edge Plus, and it's really sort of celebrating and recognizing the intersectionality between gender, race, ethnicity, and we do a lot in the organization to enable that. So that's on the DE&I side. On the wellness piece, it's again. The way we think about wellness and the connection to bringing your whole self is we truly believe from a very holistic standpoint that the wellness is physical, social, emotional, and we also include the quadrant of financial. So if we work on that holistic point of view with employees in terms of wellness, we do believe that it helps also people feel connected to the organization, feel that space where they can be themselves and supported at any moment of their life they're going through. We call that at L'Oreal the moment that matters. Whether it's you're right out of school, out of college, whether you're becoming a parent, whether you're going through different moments in life, we want the organization to provide you that support. Does that make sense?
That does. Oh, sorry. Yeah, and the trouble is that questions were changed too. Stefan's team changed some questions. So, yeah, we have kind of some, yeah. So what you read there, the intro was wrong. We'll re-record it, Stefan. Don't worry. I just don't want to read any of the questions that they weren't too comfortable. Like the next one that they weren't comfortable with Stefan answering. So yeah.
Which one was that?
About the global,
struggling?
which we have. Yeah. No. That's the one's okay. Yeah.
Okay, so.
Okay.
No, that's okay.
This is the first time, so we all have a first time. Yeah.
Should I pull it up in Outlook and do the latest one that you sent?
I think no. I think this is okay. I think the businesses are struggling and budgets are tight is still the same question, so I think we're still good there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And then Stefan, when you drop off, we'll redo the
Re-record.
introduction
Yeah.
to
Okay.
some of the stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe that's the one you sent, right?
No.
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 That's the one you just sent, Christy,
Yeah.
maybe 20 minutes ago or half an hour ago, right?
Yeah. It should say V2 on it, and so
Okay.
that's an old version. So that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, let me just pull up my Outlook here really quick.
But I can answer any question.
Good, good. Yeah, I know you wouldn't be worried. I just don't want you to have any issues with L'Oreal Communications Department.
We
They're the worst. They're the
we are going to ask you what's your favorite hockey team, and there is a right answer to that.
Of course, the New Jersey Devils, right?
There you go. There you go. Okay, so Christy, did you resend the new one here? I've pulled up the final run of show on anxiety. Is that the one? I will in just.
Did you resend it, Christy? Because I don't see it. Doesn't matter. It's okay because I've got it. Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, I think we're okay to finish up with Stefan, so we don't have to hold him up. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. No worries. All right, here we go. Jess, you can just take over where you are, and then when Stefan drops, we'll get it all figured out. Yeah.
Okay, great. You know what? Yes, no, maybe. I'm gonna ask the question about businesses struggling. Is that where we're at? Maybe?
Yeah, you go there, and then we'll ask him which is his favorite national soccer team, France or the U.S.
Right.
And so it'll be yeah.
It's going to be Le Bleu. It's going to be Le Bleu. Anyway, okay. Here we go. So let me pick up on. So, Stefan, when businesses are struggling and budgets are tight, maybe they aren't hitting the numbers. Can you recommend what they need to do let's say that again.
Here we go again.
Take two.
So, go Devils.
It's easy for you to say. Yeah, easy for you to say.
Yeah. So, Stefan, when businesses are struggling and budgets are tight, maybe they aren't hitting, our numbers. And what can you recommend in order to continue to meet the demands of well-being at work when things are just a little tense?
Yeah. You don't need actually a lot of resources and budget, Chester, to make it a priority. And I would say it really starts from the top and from the leader. Creating that space, having that dialogue, and that sort of consistent way of listening, and having a sort of a two-way discussion with your teams. It starts there, and we've seen the power of that time and time again throughout the organization. The fact that if people feel heard, if people feel like they've been heard and seen. It's a big start. So yes, it helps to have a very well articulated wellness strategy, and we're very lucky at L'Oreal. We have a lot of resources, and we make it a priority. I think it's important, be in sync as well, and making sure that your leadership is aligned with that. But I would say creating the safe space for people to be able to speak about that, to feel comfortable, to remove that stigma we were talking about, is the first big step. In the last, we do have for the HR function, so all of the HR folks in the US, we do have on a quarterly basis a big HR town hall. So of course it's hybrid. Some people are in person. During the last town hall, I reminded a number of principles for the HR function for this year. And the first one is, remember, you cannot pour from an empty cup. So our role in HR is really to support the business, the employees, throughout the year. But you cannot pour from an empty cup. So make sure yours is filled. Make sure you take the time for yourself to understand what matters to you and what's going to help you recharge.
No, I love that idea of putting on your mask first.
Yeah.
And you're right. And whether it's leaders, whether it's HR, that sometimes we have this idea of, we had a guest on talking about the martyr leader, the martyr HR person who feels like, I just need to give. Mm-hmm. And you're right. They need to take care of themselves. So on that note, what are your self-care rituals? How do you take care of yourself? I mean, you're an incredibly busy person. How do you maintain your daily rituals to keep your mental health strong?
So I'm a very, my kids would say I'm definitely OCD. I like routines because it keeps me, because like everyone, I have anxieties. My wife and I have raised 5 children, and although they're now young adults, we continue to raise them. And therefore, whether it's professionally or personally, you face uncertainty, challenges, and anxieties. So I like routines. I wake up pretty much every day around 5:15, 5:30. Then I go and do some exercise. But what helps me and I can start my day. I like to drive to my workplace because it gives me the opportunity to do some work on the phone in the morning, but also listen to music because it helps me sort of wonder and think about the future, and that's the way my mind works. And then to balance the intensity of New York City and Manhattan, and I'm sure Chester is going to relate to that. We have a place with my wife in Vermont where we like to go and be in nature. So that gives us that sense of balance. And I'm a planner, which means that helps me with my anxieties of, hey, so I've always, think through, okay, plan A, plan B, plan C, what's going to happen. And then eventually the things that you cannot control, you're down to, hey, whatever happened, I've done what I could do and plan for. The rest is not in my hands, so there's no need for me to worry about that.
You're muted, Chess. Chess, you're muted. There we go.
How are we doing?
Oh, keeps going.
There you go.
Huh.
Did it again. Hold on. There we go. So, that getting into nature is just so great. It just washes over you. It just renews you, doesn't it? So, great discussions, lots of great takeaways. If you were to say, look, these are the 2 things I want our listeners to remember from the conversation today, what might those be?
I would say ones, sort of, we live, and a lot, people talk about the VUCA world all the time. This is our reality. So don't try to change that reality because this is the world's reality. Life is uncertain. There's a lot of things that are going to hit you and that are difficult to predict. So be okay with that. That's the first one. And the second piece is really the first principle that I share with my team. You can't pour from an empty cup, which means, you need to start taking care of yourself before you take care of others.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Stefan.
No,
we know
you.
that, as the CHRO of this global brand that, you've got a lot on your plate, and that you would take time to share your wisdom and what you're doing at L'Oreal really means a lot to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys.
Well, Chess, just a really fascinating discussion with a CHRO of a major corporation who really is talking about the right things, right? Removing stigma of mental health, focusing on the mental health of employees. And I loved what he talked about. He says, even though we're through the pandemic, we're now talking about what experience do we want our employees to have? As leaders, as HR people, what experience do we want them to have so that they feel connected and engaged? Love that.
Yeah, get back to development. Back to the HR agenda, which at first I thought, where's he going with this? Well, it's investing in people. How do we make you better leaders? How do we invest in your experience? I love their motto, the beauty that moves the world. We started off the conversation, and he was very big on safety. Make sure that everybody's safe and the protocols. And he says, we've got that done. We can move on. One of the things he didn't talk about that I wanted to share with our listeners is I was able to have lunch with Stefan at their worldwide headquarters down there in the meatpacking district. Fabulous facility and wonderfully engaging. He said, because we're an essential service, all those people had to work at the factories. We didn't think it was fair to say, okay, the rest of us can work from home. And he said there was a lot of pushback on that. He said we had the protocols in place, and it was this equity piece, that it had to be fair for everyone. And he said as soon as we had that conversation, and people bought in, it was okay. So again, talking about my voice is heard, my opinion matters. Let's talk it through. Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful way to address what was a tough situation for a lot of companies. Right?
It really is. And it's what we've talked about before. Are we in this together? Well, no. If you're coming in and I'm not, there's different things. And so I liked what that leads to as well. What he said about the silver lining of the pandemic is that it has created what we call empathetic leadership, humane leadership, that where we do allow people to share feelings, to be more vulnerable, but that it has to start with us, right? We as leaders have to be vulnerable ourselves. If we are the Superman, Superwoman, nobody's going to share anything with you if they feel like you're never vulnerable with them.
Right. The listening circles he mentioned. What a great idea. We have the big town halls and so on, and we have listening circles. We're learning to listen differently. We're learning to understand priorities. Just so interesting. And then, I love that he said, look, and we're certified. We went out and said, what are the best practices? First company in the world to be certified by EDGE. I'm not familiar with that particular program. Isn't that interesting, though, that they said, hey, are we doing it right? Let us know. And the answer was yes.
That's great. Yeah. Wasn't the Edge like the guitarist on U2? So maybe it's his program. I mean, that's awesome.
He's Red Hot Chili Peppers, I think, is what you're thinking about. Yeah.
Now, another thing, too, what he's talking about, this two-way discussion with the team that people want to feel seen and heard. We've heard this over and over again as we were writing Anxiety at Work, especially younger people, as we mentioned, that they said, look, if you don't listen to me, if I don't have a voice, if there's a place to start, that's where it is. Give me a voice, but realize that I may work 80 hours for you one week, but I might not be in for 3 days the next. That's the new way of working. We have to start being understanding that the old way we used to work ain't going to cut it anymore.
Right. Lastly, for me, you can't pour from an empty cup. What a great message. And then that he would go and share his personal rituals as well. I get up at the same time. I like to listen to music. We like to go to our place in Vermont as often as we can, connect with nature. Everybody has a little different. I don't know anybody that actually likes driving into New York City for work. Yeah. I thought that was great. And yet for him, it gives him time to be on the phone. It gives him time to ruminate. Gives him time to listen to music. So everybody has their own little rituals, and I was delighted that he shared his with us.
Yeah. I mean, there are, it's $5 pizza, but other than that, really,
that's a slice, by the way. That's
exactly. Yeah. Just so everybody knows. Yeah. Hey, a special thanks to Stefan for joining us today and learning what's happening at L'Oreal with their people management. A big thanks to our producer, Brent Klein, to Christy Lawrence, who helps us find amazing guests like Stefan, and all of you who have listened in, and especially if you've downloaded, that helps us build up this community.
Yeah, download the podcast. Share it with your friends. Share it with people that you think may benefit from knowing how to manage their anxiety. And we have a wonderful online community, WeThriveTogether.global, creating a safe place to talk about anxiety in the workplace. Never forget, we've got a wonderful book. It's available at fine bookstores everywhere. It's called Anxiety at Work. And we love speaking to audiences around the world, whether it's virtual or in person, on topics like wellness, resiliency, anxiety at work, leading with gratitude. So give us a call. We'd love to talk to you about your event.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. And until next time, we wish you the best of mental health.
Take care and be well.